Okay, good evening, one and all. Again, on behalf of Yashoda Group of Hospitals, we welcome you all to the series of webinars by Department of Emergency Medicine and Critical Care. Uh, again, we are into the second year of facing the COVID pandemic. Exactly, and exactly, we are certainly we are going to make sure that we are going to face the COVID-19 patients again for the next 1 year too. Then we thought just we are going to throw some light on exactly what is the scenario across the globe related to the new strains and any change in the management strategies, way forward, and then vaccination. That we are going to talk on today. Myself is Dr. Suresh, heading the emergency department at Yashoda Hospital, Somajiguda. And another panelist is here, Dr. Kiran Kumawama, who is a senior consultant and he's heading the emergency department at Malakpet unit. We do have two speakers today. One is Dr. Arun, senior consultant at ED consultant at Yashoda Hospital, Somajiguda, as well upcoming and energetic emergency physician, Dr. Anushka, to brief you about vaccination as in the second part. Initially, we are going to start with the exactly currently where are we related to the COVID-19 pandemic, and what are the new strains which we are facing now, what are the trends in the Western countries as well as in uh, India. So that Dr. Arun is going to talk now. So I hand over to Dr. Arun, okay, to take the floor and please enlighten us related to the new strains of COVID as well as the way forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Dr. Arun, can you please cancel the
Yes.
stop the screen and reshare it again?
Cancel the?
I mean, stop the sharing and redo it again. It's not opening, right?
Yeah, it's not opening, sir.
Yeah, just close it again and reopen it again.
Yeah. No, it's not opening.
You can close that PPT, Arun. You can close it, and again, it has started with the fresh slide, right? Yes. Then I put don't save. Then I close it again. You can save. Yeah. Now again, screen sharing. Yeah.
First, open the presentation separately, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'll share it, sir.
Share the screen.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Full screen.
On the top slideshow.
Yeah.
I can start.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I'm Dr. Arun, PR consultant. So today I'll be talking about the new COVID variants and how to deal with them. So, am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes, you can continue. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So, coronaviruses are a group of RNA viruses basically that mainly they were infecting the birds and the mammals. And the previous infections which were caused by them were like SARS, MERS, the Middle East respiratory syndrome, and some common cold among people. But the recent variant of COVID coronavirus, it was caused by a group of coronavirus which we have named it SARS-CoV-2, which is more virulent in nature. This virus is closely related to the bat coronavirus, which is RATG13 variant. This is related to the bat coronavirus based on the phylogenetic analysis. The new variants of SARS-CoV-2 are recently identified, which are more virulent and more transmissible in nature than the previous ones. So this is basically the structure of the coronavirus, in which it has a capsid which covers the genetic material of the virus and protects the genetic material, which is RNA in this case, and it has an envelope which protects the virus, and there are certain proteins on the membrane of the virus which have specific functions, like glycoprotein is the main. It has main importance because it attaches to the cell membrane of the epithelium of lungs while transmitting, and usually it attaches to the ACE2 receptors, which act as an acceptor to the coronavirus, and thus it transmits the infection. And there is membrane protein, and there is some other small envelope protein, which are of like protective covering for this for the virus. So mainly the virus, it enters through the membrane of the ciliated columnar epithelium of the respiratory tract. Usually it attaches to the spike protein of the coronavirus. It attaches to the ACE2 receptors, which are present on the cells. And once it attaches to it, it activates type 2 transmembrane protease enzyme, and thus it delivers the RNA of the virus inside the cell. And this RNA, it starts producing some proteins through rough endoplasmic reticulum, ribosomes, and thus sending a mRNA and producing the viral genome in the host cell. So once the viral genome is produced, all this genetic material is transferred to the Golgi apparatus, where it is again a new viruses. The multiplication happens, and new viruses are formed, which are slowly sent out of the cell by exocytosis using the Golgi vesicles, and thus the multiplication happens of the virus. So it's the same actually. So the viral cell, it attaches to the ACE2 receptor through the via the spike protein, and once it attaches, it sends in the viral RNA into the host cell. The viral nucleocapsid is injected into the host cell by activating certain enzymes, and this is called mediated endocytosis. Once the viral RNA enters the cell, it starts RNA replication, transcription and translation occurs, and protein biosynthesis in the cytoplasm. Then it enters the Golgi bodies, and through Golgi vesicles, exocytosis happens, and the virals are released out of the cell. So initially, there are two strains of coronavirus. The less virulent one was S variant, and the more virulent and more transmissible one was L variant. So the S coronavirus, it affected 30% of the patients who were initially positive, and this was the oldest strain which affected the humans, and it was less aggressive and slower spreading. Even the symptoms were very mild, and it infected the patients in a steady rate. There was no rapid spike or anything in the spread of the virus. As for the L coronavirus variant, 70% of the patients were infected by this variant. It is a mutated form of the S variant. It is more aggressive and faster in spreading, and it causes moderate to severe severity in the illness of the disease. This variant was the reason for most common outbreak in Wuhan. And this variant spread to Europe and other countries. So basically the A strain was the first one. This was the root cause for the outbreak in Wuhan. This is the closest one related to the coronavirus that infects bats and pangolins. And after this underwent two mutations, mainly two mutations, it transformed into the B variant, B type, which was reason for the faster spread in Wuhan. And it mutated slowly, and then it was transmitted slowly to other countries. And the type C is again, it was mutated from type B, and it had faster spread. The type C mostly entered into Europe and Singapore. So basically now I'm going to talk about the mutations, where it happened, in which location of the nucleotide it happened. So the recent UK, there was a new variant, and it was known as VUI 2020 or 21, or lineage B117. It had large number of mutations, and 3 of these mutations have potential biological effects. The first one is the mutation N501Y in the receptor binding domain. Most of the mutations which mostly it happens in the receptor binding domain, and so it increases the virus's capacity to attach to a host cell. And this mutation helped the spike proteins to become more compact so that it can easily attach to the ACE2 receptors on the host cells. So this mutation N501Y is noticed both in the South African variant and also in the UK variant. And it increases the binding affinity to ACE2 receptors. And the second mutation happened in the spike deletion of 6970 del that affects the capacity of the virus to evade the immune response produced by the human organism. The third mutation, P681H, is present adjacent to the furin cleavage site. This also increases in the affinity of viral binding to the host cell. So how is the new strain different? The new UK strain which is B117, is more contagious. It is found to be 70 to 71% more transmissible than the other strains. And the mutated spike proteins helps coronavirus to infect our cells at a faster rate. And this variant, specifically even the viral load of the virus and the reproduction rate is also higher than the other strains. It affects young population also. Basically, in the older variants, young population was spared, but the newer variants are starting to affect the young population also, age less than 20 years. So as of Jan 2021, 4 novel variants have been reported from different parts of the world. And the first one, that is in United Kingdom, which we already spoke about. And the second one was in South Africa. And the third, Nigeria, and fourth, Denmark. This rapid mutations also alter the pathogenicity of the virus. We'll see in detail each variant of these viruses. So the first one is the UK variant. So this we spoke about. The second, the South African variant. This was first reported in December 2020 in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. So the prevalence was higher among young people with no comorbidities. This South African variant frequently caused severe illness. And this 501Y, this mutation was also found in the UK variant along with some other mutations. So this actually the thing is not coming properly, but I'll just explain. So this Nigerian variant, this was also discovered, reported to the WHO by the national authorities in November. And this had similarity to the South African variant, but it differed only in few other mutations where this did not cause severe illness like the South African variant, but it had more transmissibility. So this Denmark variant, it was named Mink Cluster 5. In November 2020, a variant of SARS-CoV associated with farmed minks was identified in Denmark. Suddenly there was a sudden spike in number of COVID cases and who were related to these farms. So when they investigated and did a phylogenetic study on the virus, it was found to be a different variant of the virus. And it affected a wide range of population. Even ages from 7 to 79 years of age were affected by these virus. This variant, it had a moderately decreased sensitivity to the human immune responses. So it evaded the human immune responses, and so the length of hospitalization was high and even the severity was high in this variant. And so the Denmark government had to plan for a culling of all farmed milk. Almost 17 million farmed milk were slaughtered. Mainly, these new variants have changes, the mutations in the spike proteins or in the RNA. There has been several mutations in the spike proteins, which has been noticed for the past 1.5 years. And these changes are suspected to have an effect on the antibodies, the drugs, and also the vaccines, because all these drugs and vaccines are mostly targeted on the spike proteins. So this D614G mutation, this is actually glycine replaced aspartate in the amino acid chain of the RNA. So this has become more stable, and the spike protein has become more stable, and it has more affinity towards the host cell receptor. So the initial variant of this virus was D. D is the aspartate in the 614 location of the nucleotide, which was later replaced by glycine, which became more virulent, and even the viral load was high. And its multiplication in the host cell was also high compared to the older variant of this virus. So in the pathophysiology, so once the virus enters the human cell, it causes various immune responses. T cells are first initiate, T cells become more T lymphocytes. Then later they become exhausted because of the high viral load, and lymphopenia occurs. And again, in turn, myeloid cells are stimulated, and slowly the immune responses. This immune response causes, like when there is a surge of all interleukins and other TNF, GCSF, this leads to the cytokine storm. This chemo attraction of the neutrophils, and along with T killer cells and T lymphocytes, this causes the inflammation to the tissues, and it causes injury to lungs and other organs as well. These are some extrapulmonary signs and symptoms which are present with COVID-19. In skin, you can see rashes, urticaria, vesicles, and heart, Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, myocarditis, cardiac arrhythmias, even shock and MI, secondary to the hypercoagulable state caused by the virus. And in endocrine system, hyperglycemia, DKA can be seen. And GI, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting are the most common signs. Neurologically, headaches, dizziness, encephalopathy, Guillain-Barré syndrome, even stroke. And hematologically, DVT, pulmonary embolism it causes. And elevated liver enzymes will be there, and acute kidney injury is also persistent as a complication of COVID-19. One would say, I'm having a problem with
Dr. Arun,
slides.
yeah, Dr. Arun, could you close it and reshare it again? I think we have updated another PPT. Yeah. You can go to slide 16. Yeah, straight away.
Yes.
Yes. Go. Yeah. Yes. Yes, you can. Yeah.
Yeah. So this the Nigerian variant, which we missed last time, it had a mutation in the P6081H location. So it is similar to the UK variant. The transmissibility and virulence are unclear. And it has been listed as an emerging variant by the US Centers for Disease Control. And there was one more a Malaysian variant, A701D, which was also reported, but later it was found to be a similar variant which of the South African one. So in the management, there's no specific changes in the management based on the variants. So it's the same like oxygen support, anticoagulants, corticosteroids, antivirals, and the convalescent plasma therapy. But there are some drugs which have been on trial, and some drugs have been approved by FDA under emergency usage authorization. So there are some investigational drugs which are on trial, and other therapies are also on trial. So certain antivirals like molnupiravir, favipiravir, and drugs with antiviral properties also used. Most of them are anti-helminthic group of drugs. And immunomodulators like interleukin inhibitors are also like on investigational drugs which are on trial. So the main thing is basically to prevent this is to use barrier mechanisms like use masks, frequent hand washes, and sanitization, mainly personal hygiene. So that will be the end of my webinar. And thank you, everyone. Main thing is, as we say, prevention is better than cure. So I would like to finish it with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. And that was a very informative talk, though I think we need to know about the mutations and everything. So how it's going to act on the patient, that was an elaborative talk. And I appreciate that. And next, the much awaited thing related to vaccination. As we all aware, like Government of India, Ministry of Health, and then Family Welfare launched the vaccination drive from Jan 16th, this Jan 16th. So again, related to that, the trends across the world and about the Pfizer vaccine and AstraZeneca, we do have so many vaccines around. We are hearing about so many brands, but which one we are going to take it, and then what are the complications, and AEFI. These are all concepts are going to be enlightened by Dr. Anushka. Yeah, just I'm handing over the floor to Dr. Anushka, please. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Anushka from Yashoda Hospital, Somajiguda. And today we'll be talking about COVID, way forward and vaccination. So first I would like to thank Dr. Arun for a very informative and a wonderful presentation. So moving forward, let's move forward, taking a step back. Let's look at what we have gone through in the past year. So on 31st of December of 2019, we were reported with the first case from China, a mysterious pneumonia that was quite fatal. And then on 11th, we had the first death reported, and then we had the first case out of China on 13th Jan. And then on 30th Jan, the first case was reported in India, in Kerala. And then on 11th Feb, this mysterious pneumonia was called as COVID-19. And on 8th March, because of the cases, Italy was put on lockdown. And then on the 11th of March, WHO declared it as a pandemic. And on the 12th, India had its first reported death. On 25th, India started its phase of lockdowns. And from June 1st, the unlocking began. So as we know, it has been quite the tedious year, and we had to face and learn many new things. And the virus kept evolving, changing, and showing us virulence, and we kept learning from it. And we had come up with few modalities to deal with it. So first, we had few atypical coverage antibiotics that we were using, like azithromycin and HCQs, and then for the cytokine storm, tocilizumab, and we tried to use some antivirals like lopinavir, ritonavir, and then we started with the convalescent plasma therapy. And we had discovered something called as a happy hypoxia, where the patient was unaware that they were deprived of oxygen. So then oxygen became the mainstay of treatment. And then there was a concept of early intubations. And now we are using NIVs and BiPAPs quite judiciously than before. And then there is the role of low dose steroids. So we have kept evolving as the virus has evolved, and we have kept evolving our management as the virus kept evolving. But the mainstay through everything was the preventive measures, like wearing a mask, social distancing, quarantining, isolation, all these. So what's next? As already described by Dr. Arun, there are some few mutations that have been declared more dangerous than the others. Unfortunately, UK had to go into a second lockdown due to this mutations, and there were other mutations reported worldwide. So, but fear not, because now we have vaccines. After a tedious year, we have a ray of hope with the vaccines. We have many vaccines under production, and like a superhero, they're flying in, swooping in to save us. So what exactly is a vaccine? Vaccine is a substance that we're going to introduce into a body, which will help boost the natural immune system that will help protect us from diseases. So it's like that practice match that you're going to have before your test match. So basically, vaccines have been useful previously in other viral infections like measles and chickenpox, and now we are trying to get a vaccine for COVID. So basically, what it does is when a vaccine is introduced into a body, our body has something called as antibodies and antigens. When an antigen comes from outside and the body produces antibodies for it, so what a vaccine does is it creates new antibodies in the body in abundance, so that when a disease actually affects our body, these antibodies can act on it. So why get vaccinated? Main reasons: one, to protect yourself from the disease; two, to be a part of the community, to help protect and decrease the disease load on the community. So there's something called as a herd immunity. So like this picture depicts, what happens when majority of the population is vaccinated is that when an infected person comes in contact with a non-infected person, the spread of disease will be decreased because it will be stopped by the people who have been vaccinated. So that is the basic concept of herd immunity. That is why we would like to get vaccinations, and COVID-19 vaccination has been on top of the priority. So how is a vaccine produced? Well, vaccine is born in a lab, and it is made of the antigen of the virus or the organism, and it includes a whole lot of other chemicals and adjuvants and preservatives to keep it stable and to go through it through the long process that it is going to go right from the manufacturer to the patient. So there's something called as a cold chain. As soon as the vaccine is prepared from the manufacturer, it has to be transported up to the patient. So during this, there is a certain temperature at which every vaccine, it depends from vaccine to vaccine, that has to be maintained. So for few vaccines, it is 2 to 8 degrees. For few vaccines, you need to freeze dry it. Some require deep freezing, some require room temperature. So depending on that, the cold chain will maintain it. So right from the manufacturer to the transport, from wherever it goes to the patient, we maintain the cold chain. But before introducing a vaccine into the general public, there are few phases and steps that are necessary to ensure its safety. So so there are about 6 steps, and this first one will be the clinical stage. So the preclinical stage is basically where the idea is born for a vaccine, and it is put into theory and practicals. And in vivo, we try to generate the vaccine, and we use various combinations of the virus particles or the organism particles that can help produce antibodies. Phase 1 includes a small number of animals or human subjects, like about 10-20. This is basically to calculate the dose, determine the dose of the vaccination that a person would require. Phase 2, a little more. It will include a larger subject, somewhere around say 200 to 500 people, human subjects or animal subjects, and this is done basically to see if the desired effect is being produced by this dosage and by this vaccination. Phase 3 includes a larger population, thousands or lakhs, in which there is also a control group, and we basically compare the results of the population that we have given the vaccine to, and also to the ones that we haven't. And then you have the regulatory review. Once you get the phase 3 results, it goes into the regulatory review, where the governing body or the respected body, like the CDC in USA, can come to a decision if it can be approved and distributed. So the last one will be approved and distributed. This is again relating to the government governing bodies, where they have to come up with strategies and awareness programs and proper flow, so that the vaccine is distributed thoroughly, smoothly into the population. So, as already described, because of the structure of the COVID vaccine, we can use all the respective parts of the virus to create a vaccine. So first we have virus vaccines, which come in an inactivated form. So basically, the very virulent COVID-19 will be deactivated, and this very subtle form will be introduced into the human body, which will initiate antibody response from the body. And then there is viral vector vaccines, where a product of another vaccine is introduced into other vaccines, like an adenovirus or a measles vaccine, and the desired effect is produced from these vaccines, from these viruses, sorry. And then there is nucleic acid vaccine. So there are 2 nucleic acids, one is DNA and one is RNA. And we all know RNA, the virus is an RNA virus. So these are sampled, and according to this, once these are genetically modified in the lab, then they're introduced into the human body, and they can also produce antibodies. Then there is protein-based vaccines, like the spike protein, the envelope protein. These fragments are taken separately, and we try to produce antibodies from this. So there are various vaccines being produced by various companies all around the world, and there are too many names to be mentioned, but a few of them are these. There is Bharat Biotech from India, we have Pfizer Moderna from USA, we have AstraZeneca from UK, the Oxford AstraZeneca, we have Zydus from India. So there are more than 200 in production. So all these are under various phases, and they are using various parts of the virus to create their vaccines. And this is according to the Vaccine Center of London, that this data is. There are about, as you can see, there are more than around 220 vaccines that are being evaluated and under different phases that will be used for COVID-19 vaccination. So yeah, basically, I think everyone has been following the news. So the news, right now, the ones that have come out of production and are being used worldwide are in the USA, and in the UK we have the Pfizer and the BioNTech vaccine, which is basically an mRNA-based vaccine. This is a revolutionary vaccine that has been created because one, it has been created in a very short span, that is within a year, and the efficacy of an mRNA vaccine has been proved to be around 90%, where generally for a flu vaccine it is between 60 to 80%, but the mRNA-based vaccines have showed efficacies of up to 90%. So that is a very good thing. So the Pfizer, the BioNTech, and the Moderna, which are being used in USA, have about 90% of efficacy. Then we have the Zydus, which is a DNA-based vaccine, which is in India, which has recently entered the phase 3. So it will take some time for it to come into the population. Then we have the Sputnik V from Russia, which is a viral vector vaccine. And then we have Covaxin, which is from Bharat Biotech, which is an inactivated vaccine, which is in India, which has just completed its phase 3 trials. And it is going to come into use under emergency usage authorization as granted by the governing body. Next, we have Covishield. Covishield is basically the vaccine created from Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. It is being produced by Serum Institute in Pune. And already the AstraZeneca vaccine is being used in UK and USA. So every virus, every vaccine, like I said, has its own cold chain. So the Pfizer is actually a very deep freeze vaccine. It requires about minus 80 to minus 70 degrees to be in the cold chain to be transported or to be used. But the Covaxin and the Covishield can be stored at a temperature of 2 to 8 degrees. So that is good for India. We might not, as it's a tropical country, we cannot maintain such deep temperatures. So yes, there are about 9 to 10 vaccines that are being used in India, that are being produced in India. And the first two, that is the Covishield and the Covaxin, have been given EUA, that is emergency authorization, emergency use authorization permission in India by the governing body. So the Covishield, as I mentioned, is a vector virus, which is including adenovirus, which is in collaboration with AstraZeneca Oxford. It is being done, it is being produced in the Serum Institute of India, Pune. And we have the Covaxin, Bharat Biotech in Hyderabad. This is an inactivated virus. It has just completed its phase 3 trials, and it is going to be used in EUA. And others are Zydus. We also have Sputnik V, and we also have Vesiculo and inactivated rabies vaccine that are being treated. Bharat Biotech also wants to come out with a nasal vaccine, nasal spray by March or April, but we'll have to wait on data. So every vaccine, any medicine, everything comes with its own risk. So the CDC has come up with a risk stratification so that we can take preemptive measures for the complications that might arise due to vaccination. So the green is the least, the yellow is moderate, and the red is absolute no. So we can, pregnancy, lactation, immunocompromised, they can be vaccinated, but again, it depends on the degree of risk. That is severely immunocompromised, usually an HIV patient. Patients like that are not preferred. Pregnancy, lactation, later into the pregnancy, they'll not be allowed. And either ways, these three categories require a 15-minute observation after the vaccination. And it's a green, it's a go. If there are no allergies related to any vaccinations or previous medications, it's a green, it's a go. But either way, we will require them to have a 15 to 30-minute of observation period after the administration of the vaccine. Proceed with caution. Moderate to severe disease, this is not exactly with an active COVID disease. This is for other diseases that the patient might be having. We have to do a risk assessment. Does the patient really require it? Do the benefits outweigh the risks? And is there any history of allergic reaction to previous vaccinations or any other injectable forms that the patient had? And according to that, we'll have to vaccinate them. Either ways, they will require an observation period for 30 minutes. Contraindication, there are no absolute contraindications apart from anaphylactic shock to previous vaccinations or any other injectable forms that the patient had, or any other cross anaphylaxis that the patient had for any other mRNA vaccines or any other preservatives that are going to be used in the vaccine. And it's an absolute no for the vaccination. So AEFI. AEFI is nothing but adverse event following immunization. It is self-explanatory, like any untoward event that we expect after the initial dose of vaccination. There is no perfect vaccination, there is no perfect medicine. Everything comes with its own risk and own contraindications and own complications, and so do the COVID-19 vaccines. WHO defines AEFIs as 5 types. So the first one is the vaccine product itself. So it is due to one or the more inherent properties of the vaccine, like suppose a COVID-19 might cause pneumonia, might cause a respiratory infection or cutaneous infection. Next is the vaccine quality defect related to the reaction, maybe because of the quality of the vaccine, the manufacturer of the vaccine, anything like that. That will be the vaccine quality defect related reaction. Immunization error related vaccination. This could relate to the improper administration or improper storage or improper cold chain that can cause any reactions. And most commonly, second most commonly is the immunization anxiety related. So the very fear of getting immunized or the very fear of needles can cause this reaction. Coincidental event, this according to WHO is the most common type of AEFI, and it is caused it is not related directly to the vaccination, but it is due to some other thing, something that has coincidentally happened or co-occurred with the vaccination. Yes, so according to the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, for clinical classification, the AEFI have been described into 3 parts. We have the minor, severe, and serious. The minor is like any local reaction, pain at the site, swelling at the site, fever, and fatigue. Severe would include something like fever, anaphylaxis, and anaphylactic shock. Serious AEFIs are, there are some neurological deficiencies that can cause coma, that can cause death, that can cause AEFI clusters. AEFI clusters are basically 2 or more AEFIs happening in the single period of vaccination. Suppose if there is a run going on for vaccination right now and 2 to 3 people are affected in the same period, then that comes under a cluster, and this is very serious, and it has to be reported. Everything has to be reported, and this has to be dealt in the first priority. So next we managing AEFI, the most important and the dangerous one is the anaphylactic shock. Every vaccination run that is going to happen, every center is going to have an anaphylactic kit, and we are going to deal with anaphylaxis. So there is going to be a medical personnel present, and so there are few symptoms for anaphylactic shock, something like difficulty in breathing, wheeze, stridor, decrease in saturations, sudden collapse. So what we can do then is that we administer adrenaline, and then we can give antihistamines and steroids to stabilize them with some fluids and ship them to the emergency or the ICU as soon as possible, and they will require monitoring. So overall, vaccine reactions could be immediate and delayed, and what we need to do in an event like this is to stay calm, first of all, and then deal with it. So we deal with anaphylaxis, we can deal with the fever and deal with them. We have to report this, and there'll be a chain of the custody of the governing body that we'll have to escalate the matter to, so that it is reported and we make sure that such kind of events do not repeat. So vaccination strategies in India. India is very eager to start its vaccination, and already other parts of the world have started, like USA and UK and Brazil and Canada. So we have a body created which is called as the NECVAC, which is the National Expert Group on Vaccine Administration of COVID-19, and this is going to be in the block level, district level, and state level, which each having their interbodies, and with their intra-departmental, intra-block communications and strategies, we are going to roll out the vaccines. So the basic idea would be to enter. We'll already have to have a list of beneficiaries whom we want to get vaccinated. Then you're going to vaccinate them. Then you're going to observe them for 30 minutes, and then when everything is good and fine, then you're going to exit them. So the primary beneficiaries identified by the government will be the healthcare workers, the frontline workers, and citizens above 50 years. So the basic concept is India wants to vaccinate its most vulnerable. So it's going to vaccinate about 30 crore people in the next coming 7 to 8 months. And is going to include healthcare workers, about 1 crore people, frontline workers, which not only includes the healthcare workers, but also your police and your municipal workers and all these people, which will come about up to 2 crore people. And we'll require citizens, senior citizens above 50 years of age, and with or without comorbids, and less than 50 years of age with serious comorbids to get vaccinated, and that will come up to 27 crore people. So about 30 crore people are going to be benefited, or are planned to be benefited by this vaccination. Already government has started its awareness programs and teaching modules. It has an online and offline modules, and there have been many successful dry runs run throughout the states, not only Telangana and Hyderabad, but also India-wide. So that people can, so the emergency personnel are better trained, equipped to deal with AEFIs or any other adverse events such may occur. So COVID, government has also launched a NeoData app called as CoWIN. So it's basically win for the COVID, win for us, don't fall for the COVID, but yeah, it's called as CoWIN. And so it's basically a mobile app, pretty simple. Either you can download on your mobile or onto your server, and it will give you the instructions based on it. You need to register it. Once you're registered on CoWIN, on that particular day or that particular time, you can go to the respective center and you have to just confirm your registration details and you will get vaccinated. So there are about 160 centers estimated in Telangana, about 86 in Hyderabad, and all the 3 branches of Yashoda are registered as centers for vaccination. So the basic objectives of vaccination in India would be a thoroughly planned a vaccination drive, which will include that we have enough stock to vaccinate all this estimated 30 crore people, that we have enough vaccines and enough centers to smoothly do all this, and like I said, to cover 30 crore people in the next 7 to 8 months. And we also active registration and surveillance on CoWIN. So if there are any adverse reactions or anything else that need to be reported, we have a collective data ongoing continuous surveillance on the CoWIN. And yes, it's a major task to vaccinate an Indian subcontinent, because we make the majority. So vaccinating us would definitely put a very big dent on the growing COVID. So a little disclaimer, vaccination is not a cure. It's only going to be added as a modality to the current treatment management part for the COVID. And the mainstay would still remain social distancing, wearing PPEs, wearing your masks, and discouraging crowd gathering, quarantine, isolation. Even if you get vaccinated, even if your family members get vaccinated, social distancing will be a major part of COVID. And there will be two doses of the vaccine, of the Covaxin and the Covishield, which will be given about a month apart, 28 to 30 days apart. And to receive the full efficacy, you need to get both the doses, and you will still have a chance of infection between the doses and up to 7 to 14 days after the second dose too. And I repeat, vaccination is an option. It is not going to be compulsion. You can weigh your risks and benefits, and you can take it up as an option. So yes, that will be the end of my talk. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating.
Dr. Suresh, please unmute your mic.
Yeah, that was an excellent talk by Dr. Anushka. It's wonderful. I think you have covered all the points related to vaccination. I think we have a few questions around. We need to clarify the certain questions by participants. I think a few questions you can take, Anushka, regarding vaccination. What are the side effects of vaccination? I think you have elaborated, but I think many of the healthcare professionals, they are in worry, like in dilemma, whether to proceed for vaccination or not. Many of us, even public, are asking us, like, is it safe or not? So how are you going to do that? Like, what are the expected side effects?
Yes, every vaccination, like I've said, has its own side effects. So COVID-19 vaccines also will have side effects. But they have gone through extensive trials and they have come out, they have been approved. So the common side effects that we can expect will be pain at the site, fever, fatigue, and some weakness. And you can also have anaphylaxis, anaphylactic shock. And there are some reported cases of Bell's palsy and neurological disturbances. But those are for Pfizer and Moderna, not for AstraZeneca and Covaxin. So I think it's always a risk to benefit ratio. So given all the information, we have to see. The whole world is waiting to see what is going to happen, because it is new. It is a completely new concept. Even for the people who have created it, it's a new concept. So we have to just learn on the road. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. And which group of the patients, like patient group, who are going to benefit out of this? So we can see, like initially, healthcare workers are going to get the vaccine, and then later, frontline workers, and then what about the rest of the population? To whom we should target? Our government has targeted for.
So yes, I think the decision taken by the government was a good one. First, they're giving to the frontline and the most vulnerable, the frontline workers, and also to geriatric people, because as we know, the death toll in their age is more. So yeah, 50 years and above. So I think that will be the group of population that will be benefited the most. Unfortunately, I think to the last 1 year they have gone through lockdown and they have been separated and away from their loved ones and all that. So maybe this vaccination will give them a sigh of relief in all this.
Okay, thank you. And we have another questions. I invite Dr. Kiran Verma sir to come on to the floor. Just enlighten us about these ones, like what is way forward as a leads for us, and then related to vaccination, how can we clear the doubts among the healthcare professionals whether to take the vaccine or not? And one question for you, sir. Out of all available vaccine, which one do you recommend?
Yeah, good evening, one and all. So first of all, I'd like to appreciate Dr. Anushka and Dr. Arun for their elaborate talk and throw us a light on gray zones, especially they are like gray zones. So regarding to our question, to be frank and to tell the truth, so we don't know the exact answer for this because everything is in the trial phase. So we haven't been able to decide which is the best because all are under trials. So just they started recently. Then many of the people, they don't know the effects and adverse effects, benefits. So we don't know. So for this, exactly no answer for it. But when it comes to countries, which one to be selected, it purely depends on their local needs, which serves them best.
Yes, sir. Then do we recommend our healthcare community? Are we going to push our residents or healthcare community, our friends, to take the vaccine or not? One question
We
was
can suggest them. We
Yeah.
can suggest them, but we can't force them to take it all because they have all the rights, say as all the citizens are having. So most of the people are denying to take the medication. What is the vaccination? So as like our citizens, we also have our own rights to deny.
Yeah.
If I feel that it is going to help me, I'm going to take it. Then same way. So I'm not going to. I'm going to suggest, but I'm not going to force. I'm not going to compel any of my residents and colleague doctors, family and friends.
So what about like current scenario in India? Like everyone is saying second wave or third wave, or we don't know. It has been happening in clusters. So what is the exact scenario?
Yes,
In
sir.
India?
Now we are crazy about second wave of corona
Yeah.
because we have struggled a lot in 2020. So everyone has a fear that same thing is going to be continued in the coming year as well. That's why people are worrying about second wave. But when it comes to our recent trends, we have been seeing number of cases increasing from last 2 to 3 weeks. So if you take across India, there are thousands of cases reporting per day. But to say what is the second wave, we need to have some reports and data and all. So if you observe a pan India reports, they are not suggestive of second wave because outbreaking can occur different times at different states. So with all the collective data, we cannot comment on second wave, which is going now or not. It may or may not happen in the future as well. So second wave is like a passionate word for all these things.
Yeah.
So just forget about it. So first of all, as Dr. Arun said, prevention is better than cure. Please protect yourself by means of frequent hand wash, social distance, and wearing PPEs when you're at workplace. So these are the better things what we need to take care rather than thinking about second wave.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. And there is another question, like any new advancements in the treatment modalities? I will take this question. Basically, as such, as we are seeing, we are doing the same as per the updated guidelines. Just oxygen support or NIV or mechanical ventilation if it is really required. If it is indicated, we are proceeding. Related to drugs, I think remdesivir was widely used along with the corticosteroids, dexamethasone, which was widely used in UK also, and still using. There are certain drugs which are, as per the, I mean, got the FDA approval as the emergency use authorization, like baricitinib, which is a immunomodulator, which is a Janus kinase inhibitor. These group of drugs are on free, but still there is a not conclusion to use this, or like it all depending on the patient to patient and conditions and patient condition, the severity which we are going to decide upon which modality of treatment which we are going to use. Another question, can we expect more variants or strains in the coming future? Yes, of course. You're seeing, we don't know what's going to happen over the next 1 year, but as a frontline workers and healthcare providers, we should be prepared to tackle any scenario. And as Dr. Arun rightly said, prevention is better than cure. You're not, there is a term called, even Royal College of Emergency Medicine recently made a safety splash on face mask fatigue. I think over the months we are using face masks, but there is a tendency that we are not a bit lenient, but when we are attending to patients, we are not wearing full PPE if we observe. But really, if it is a aerosol generating procedure or something, but please protect yourself by wearing a recommended face mask, okay, especially if it is a AZP procedure.
Yes, I would just like to add that, like I said before, vaccine is not the cure. It's just going to add to the modality. So even if you're vaccinated, or even if your surrounding people are vaccinated, make sure that you are following the preventive measures. You are wearing the mask, you are doing your social distancing. What has come to be the norm of life in 2020 has to be followed through. We cannot just abandon this.
Exactly, that was rightly said.
I completely agree with you, Dr. Anushka. True.
Dr. Arun, I think you can take this question. New variant now coming across. Is it different from older strain? And then is there any different in the treatment modalities?
No, sir. In the treatment modalities now, it is the same. We are treating them as the same as the old, but the newer variants are showing some increase in spread, like I already said, and the severity are increase in some variants, especially the South African variant. So in this case, maybe more intensive treatment can be used, like ECMO if required. And other than that, now the same treatment we are using, the other drugs which are on trial or which will be approved next by the FDA, that only we can use it. Now, there are no drugs as of now.
So why we need to differentiate between the newer and older variant? So another question has been asked.
Yeah, it is important to differentiate because frequently, if there is any increase or decrease in the surge or the spike, anything in the progress of this pandemic, we are monitoring, we are doing a phylogenetic study just to see any variation in the mutations and to predict the progress of the disease, progress of the pandemic, to know whether it will worsen or it is the new variants are becoming less virulent or more virulent, and what is like what happened in the mutations, which part of the gene is replicated or duplicated, what has happened. Mainly, we are monitoring the location and the significance of these mutations. So we should follow the different variants.
Okay, that concludes the question and answer session. I requested Dr. Kiran Kumar Verma to make an end note and conclude the session, please.
Yeah, when it comes to our talk, so how new strain is different. Just forget about what is the difference between new strain and old strain. So new strain may be different in terms of rapid spread and severity. But when I when I gone through the literature, I have found many things. So COVID-19 strain majorly affecting on the lungs, but new strains, most of the new strains are affecting the CNS. Just to take care of it. So most of the patients may present with what is the GBS, some people with Bell's palsy, some people even with the CVA. So new recent strains, they are falling on the CNS when compared to the older one. So that is one. Then when it comes to the vaccination, yes, there are many vaccines which are available at present, but we don't know which has more efficacy, then which has got more adverse effects. So we have to weigh the risk and benefits. So based on that only, we have to take the vaccination. So when it comes to the vaccination, whom to be given? So we don't know. In elderly people with comorbids, non-comorbid patients, and pregnant, and children. So exactly we don't know because all are gray zones. The people, those who are created vaccine also, they don't know whom to be given first. Who are going to be benefited more. So these are gray zones. First thing is we have to take the vaccine, being a healthcare workers and frontline worker, protect ourselves first. Then we look for the complications. If anything is there, we'll treat. So if for everything, we are there to take care. Being a healthcare professionals, being a frontline workers, so we have to come forward to take the vaccine, and then we have to go forward. Suresh sir?
Yes, sir. That was correct, sir. That was aptly said. And I would like to finish this session. I'm it's very special thanks to Dr. Kiran Kumaruma, who is always supportive for the academic.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. And there was excellent talk by Dr. Arun and Anushka, who enlightened us about the new strains and vaccination. Hope to see you all for the upcoming sessions. Until then, okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye to all.
Thank you, Rundal. Thank you.